So yeah, we're into lunch with the A2s now. And you know, a lot of this came out of the idea of how do we connect differently with our audiences, with our coworkers. And the role of the A2 is really a what maybe I don't misunderstood is not the right word, but in many times you guys are out there. You're the first people that are going to be talking to talent. You're the first person that an executive producer might see that morning. You may be that individual that is really making the A1, frankly, look good. And you're going to be the first people when there's a problem. You're going to be the first people to recognize when there's a problem, typically. And then you're going to be the first people that are expected to go fix the problem, right? So that's a bit of a load.
And of course, the first person who gets blamed.
Of course.
Well, yeah. Well, unless Pete's there, in which case we all try to blame Pete, but you know, it doesn't always work that way. But in some ways, it's a thankless job. And in many ways, it is an opportunity, right? The A2 role is, if you think about it, you folks talk to more people than the A1, even most of the producers, because you're going to talk to every client, you're to every talent, and you're going to learn the nuances. You have to learn those. You have to understand what people are comfortable with. So what I'm going to do, we do have a lot of people, so I'm going to try and break this down by market segment, right? So let's do this in somewhat of alphabetical order and reverse differently than rehearsal. I'm going to start with theater, all right? Because I think that's right. Reece, Jenny, you're up, all right? So what I think, let's kind of level set for a second. The industry, whether that's corporate or whether that's broadcast, has been influenced by theater. Theater was one of the original, right? Performance was the original performance platform that we saw. And so from that aspect, you folks your industry has informed how we work, what we do, the impression. So I'm going to start with something that's probably top of mind for right now. And that is, how do you think COVID is going to change how you interact with your talent? Jenny, I'll start with you on that one. Do you have any thoughts? I know this is brand new to us all. Do you have any just gut feelings?
Oh, wow. I kind of feel, I guess, that it might take us a little bit longer to get back into things than we were really hoping, because we are the ones that are closest to people. I often say that what I do is a lot like nursing and a lot like waitressing, because we get very close to people very quickly. We have to be comfortable with people, and we're handling common things, sometimes touching them with the tape, being in a very close proximity very quickly. And I have a feeling that it might take us a little longer to get back to that. That's really, you know, this is uncharted territory, as we all know.
It is.
Yeah.
How about you, Reece? What's your feelings right now?
I think, I don't know how much our relationship with the talent will change immediately. It's going to take a minute before they let 2,000 people be in a room together again. So I think that's what I'm kind of waiting to see. But I don't know how we do the job as we're accustomed to without getting in there. Like you said, it's hands-on, and being able to be comfortable and close to people is key. So we'll see when we get back.
I mean, you're literally hands-on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then, you know, didn't think we'd get into the nitty-gritty of it. You know, we all know we've had to handle those sweaty pieces that come off of people at the end of a show. You know, we've had to deal with, you know, some of those less savory things that we're constantly cleaning. I mean, in the opera world, because I also work in theater and also do opera, I'm constantly washing my hands. Every time before I go into somebody's room, I wash my hands. Thankfully, there's a sink right there. I do what I need to in their room. I come back out, wash my hands, because they are hypersensitive to anyone that has a sniffle. So that's something that I've been dealing with for some time. So in that realm, I don't know that it's going to change things a lot until we get actually into the room and you're with somebody. And it's probably going to be a case-by-case basis, you know, how comfortable each person is.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are even more sensitive.
It's interesting to see newscasters, when they're interviewing now, are resorting to boom mics instead of lavs on their talent.
Really?
And I wonder if some performers will want to go back to, if their role or their position will want to say, no, I don't want a lav. I just want to use the lectern mic, or can I use a stand mic instead? You know, that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
Well, you know, I mean, obviously in theater, what are you, or opera, what are you thinking, Jenny?
As far as what
do you think
might be used?
That changes? Yeah. Do you see any changes to hardware, you or Reece, in terms of what people are using, or more about how it's applied?
You know, for the opera world, we were just really on the edge of moving to more RF mics. We have a couple new audio engineers for broadcast, and they're much more open to using those mics. So I don't know how that's going to change things for us yet, because they were, you know, so judicious about where things were being placed anyway. Unlike, you know, maybe the Broadway world, where it's just like, everybody gets a mic. You're on stage, everybody gets one.
Yeah, everybody gets a mic, and I don't, changing that paradigm, you know, the lav paradigm, I think that's a real big, that'd be a really big change for Broadway.
I don't know that we're even going to really see that. Do you think? I think it's more probably about how we're approaching it, right? Whether that's the cleanliness of the product, but yeah, I don't see us going backwards in terms of the technology we're applying, but you know, the work, the load you folks probably will be facing going up in the short term.
I think everybody is going to be more conscious going back about wiping things down and just being clean. I know even in the few weeks before Broadway got shut down, I know everybody, you know, props and costumes and sound, everybody who deals with the stuff that people touch were being more careful, and, you know, more alcohol, more sanitizer, more hand washing, all that.
Now I got a question from Jimmy Van B. Are you expecting to see more of a doctor's office mentality, because people are used to that now, expecting to see you wash your hands when you come in, or use, you know, like often when doctors will come into a room to talk to the patient, they immediately put on either gloves or wash their hands. So I wonder if that's going to carry over from our 6 months of COVID training.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, honestly, we're not the only ones that would be dealing with it, because you've got the wardrobe department that they're in very close proximity, as well as makeup artists that are in there for even longer sessions than we are. I mean, we're usually pretty hit and run. We get in, get out, you know, least contact possible. But something that I would like to bring up, if I may, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I was on a television shoot where we were having to mic up a bunch of different, you know, talent that were each in their holding rooms. But one of the talent, when they came in that day, was visibly sick, and it was flu season. And we were running up against the problem, the 3 A2s that were on the show, we refused to mic her because she was clearly sick in that moment. And I think that's something across the board, you know, that we face every season, that when somebody really shouldn't be at work, they could be infecting people, and having management understand that and not push us into situations that would put us possibly in danger.
Yeah, especially in a theatrical cast, everybody's in, you know, there's 40
Right.
people sometimes in a few dressing rooms, you know, the flu to just your regular cold every year, it's an issue, and a bunch of people get sick over the winter, and you know, everybody tries to avoid it, but I think
it's the crud that goes through the cast. Yeah,
it's the crud that goes through the cast, and it's hard to avoid on a good year, you know, let alone this new thing that everybody's very hyper conscious of. So.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
got a note from Joe Foley. He says for years he fought with producers and company management getting Purell and other cleaning supplies. I suppose now that will be not such a hard fight. And secondly, he says many lav manufacturers say don't use alcohol on our product because it will discolor the body.
Right. I mean, I tend to not use alcohol very often on my mics when I clean them. Sometimes a quick if they're not colored, but I do try to use other means. I mean, water is still the best solvent. And if you can find another solution that you can use that's not as harsh, I try to do that first. But to the Purell point, I'd say the first tour I was ever on when I learned about Purell was the Damn Yankees tour with Jerry Lewis back in, the late 90s. Everybody kept getting sick and we had a really bad season of it. And he was able to facilitate that. And we ended up with Purell dispensers everywhere around the set and the stage. And that was the first time I experienced that.
That's a good point. So let's do this. Let's bring in Sarah, Dave, and Ryan now, because I want to keep moving on this topic, because in the corporate space, right, in this corporate theater, if you will, sometimes the meeting space, we know that there's a sensitivity to obviously illness from the standpoint of leaders. You know, you're dealing with the top leaders maybe in the world that are coming in to speak. Maybe they're corporate CEOs, chairmen, where, you know, normally, you know, the percentage of very sensitive people to illness was a very minuscule amount. Now, essentially everybody comes in and is sensitive to this. And let's establish maybe that for our discussion purposes, up until there's a vaccine, right? So we know that, hey, this can be solved. We'll think about that window of time, right? And so when you're going into a corporate environment, number one, everything is typically very rushed going in, right? And you know, we're in Kobo or we're in, you know, another convention center. All of our friends in the carpentry department have been spending the first 3 days split in a set, very similar to theater, except that, you know, everything's just compacted in terms of schedule. So we have all these normal challenges. Now, what do you think somebody feels when you walk up with a set of gloves and mask on like Mac had, right? Now, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago before this happened, probably a different story, discussion. You know, Sarah, why don't we start with you? How do you see in this corporate space somebody reacting to you, whether that's a chairman, whether that's, you know, people that aren't used to being on stage and don't have this same workflow?
Well, my thought on that is that a lot of corporate for me is everybody's completely different, and it's a whole bunch of reading the room, and that comes from the top down, from the CEO down, and then onto the executive producers and how they interact with us. And I often take my cues from them. Their relationship with the CEOs is sort of how personal you can get or how close you can get. And if they, you know, if the CEO is someone who's a germaphobe, I've even had, you know, we've already gone through this with medical conventions or doctors or whatever, and they want to see you hand sanitize. They want to be, they're very hands off, or they'll grab the mic from you and do it themselves. They don't want you to touch them. So I think a lot of that is personal. You know, some people are probably going to be less concerned just because their attitude is a little more bravado about all of this. But I think that's going to be a conversation that producers are probably going to have ahead of time. That's going to be like, this is our new procedure, right? And I would hope they would come to me and be like, look, we're going to do gloves, we're going to do masks, we're going to have hand sanitizer everywhere, whatever the answer is. And I think that really comes from the top down. Everything in corporate is so different every day. You know what I mean? Every CEO has their own attitude.
Right. Dave, do you have any thoughts on where you think you will work, how you work, and then, you know, to Sarah's points and what Jenny and Reece have said so far?
I do. I think in the corporate realm, we're going to see short term at least return to handhelds and lectern mics. Handhelds really easy to wipe down, won't cause it any problems. Windscreens on them can be replaced frequently. I think we'll see a lot more perishable per production windscreens on, and even on lavs and head warns. And I think we're going to see that. Lectern mics, where there are lavs and head warns, I think it's going to be more time allowed to mic people so it can be done in a better system. Yeah, less of the, I have to mic an entire panel of 12 people and I have 10 minutes.
Maybe less mic swaps too. Less, you know, we have more actual mics if they're going to use them.
I think there could easily be a moment of, no, this is your element. I'm seeing that in the corporate realm. Intercom, I've been aggressive about making sure that the same person gets the same headset for a while now. And I think that's going to become just the rule.
I've always done that just because I think it's safer for the people and they feel better. It's their headset for the week or whatever it is.
Yep. And then hopefully it's getting sanitized at some level. I was very happy to see Clearcom release a document on sterilization or maintenance of headsets.
Yeah, I agree. And so Ryan, you're besides being in corporate, you overlap a little into music, and we know musicians. So if we have stage performances in theater, we have opera, we have CEOs, we have corporate America, then we have musicians, right? And that is kind of a whole thing unto itself. Where do you, in crossing over in both these, you can comment wherever you're comfortable. How do you think you're going to approach this differently?
I think that what everyone said so far has been pretty accurate. I mean, we're already so sensitive because we're getting so close to people, especially in the corporate world. You know, I'm already washing my hands as much as I can, using hand sanitizer. I think we'll probably have those elements a little more visual for people backstage to see that we're doing those things. In regards to the musicians, I think that all of this is going to slowly come back to the way it was before this all started happening. But I think, like Dave said, there'll be handhelds and lecterns that are going to be maybe more favored till we get back to that transition. But, you know, we're already so close and personal to people as A2s, putting lavalier microphones on people that I think most of us are already being sensitive to that, getting people on, I think more equipment might be necessary to keep people on their own devices throughout a meeting or an event. So I think, you know, I think it's going to be, the cleanliness will need to be a little more transparent, even though I think most of us are doing a lot of that stuff already. And there'll be more people keeping tabs on that, I would guess, from the food chain up.
Sure. Now, Mark and Gaff, I'm going to bring you guys in here. Mark and Gaff have a lot of experience, you know, Mark obviously with broadcast and the talent, right? We got IFBs, we've got microphones. You know, obviously for years, talent has always had their IFBs the same way that music has their IEMs and things like that. But what do you think is going to be happening? You work in studio, you work in the field, you do sports. What do you think your new workflow is going to be once you're out in the field? And maybe also talk about how you think personally you're going to do stuff differently to protect yourself physically.
For me personally, when it comes to getting up next to some talent, politician, a sports figure, I'm going to try and include more of the visual reinforcement of, you know, washing my hands, making sure that the gear is wiped down and clean before I get it to them, and then let them see me wipe it down when they're done with it and we get it off of them. I agree it'll eventually probably go back to where we are today, where things are a little less structured, but I think that'll be post vaccination for sure. It's just where we, you know, the TV world is no different really than the theater world or the corporate world. You know, we all deal with various personalities. It's always best to try and various personalities on the production team and on the stage or on the other side of the camera. It's always best, and it's always been my approach to make a personal connection with each and every person I'm dealing with up close to, and get a feel for what, you know, how they're going to react to my personality and the way I do things. So once I've got that baseline set, I can modify whatever approach I have to make them feel more comfortable. So
well, I think that's a big part of it is your relation with these people. That's a big part of our business, as all of us know. We've met some great A2s that don't have that interpersonal thing, and you know, it's hard to work. And I think we got to be prepared for everybody to have their own element if they so request it. Because I don't know, if I was on a show and realized my mic was being used for 10 other people, I don't care how much you clean it, I might not be too happy about that. You know, maybe body packs we use the same, but, you know, elements, everybody has their own, just as in comms, as Dave said, which I've been doing for years anyway. I think everybody should get their own headsets and keep it for the run of the show. It's easier for us to track problems, and it's also easier, it's better for them. And you know, like Mark said, I think it's the people too. We have to see how they feel and be appropriate.
I agree with that. So why don't we do this? We're getting some notes about, we got some questions about how everybody kind of got started into the business and what brought them here. Because I think, you know, COVID is going to be here for a while. So we'll leave that one on the docket and kind of push it off the side for a bit. We got a few more months to address that one. But we also got a note from some folks on bandwidth things. So I'm going to ask our panelists, we'll keep Mark and Gaff on screen if you don't mind, and other panelists, if you wouldn't mind muting your cameras just to save on bandwidth. Apparently we're using a lot of Zoom's bandwidth today. But can Gaff, let's start with you on how'd you get into the role that you're in at this point, right? How you know, and let me just do a little background. You're welcome to fill in, but you know, you do a lot of work doing broadcast specials, especially things that revolve around music, right?
Mainly,
big stage changes, a lot, right? So why don't you just give us a little background on kind of what you're doing now, how you got there, and maybe what you thought you would have been doing, you know, 30 years ago, you know, and has it changed, or are you doing exactly what you planned? So why don't you go ahead and give us a little background on that?
Yeah, well, you know, where I started was as you know, hanging around a bunch of great players, and I wasn't one of them. So I went to the technical end of it as a kid and started mixing bands in local clubs, and ended up getting married and started working in the studio. And they wanted to build a truck that was Sheffield, so we built our first truck. That put me out there doing live, you know, which is a great thing to be able to do live recording, because you get to do the live thing in your room, in your controlled environment. And you learn how to be kind of transparent, because you don't want, when you're recording live, you don't want them to know you're there really, because they're nervous enough. They don't need to be more. And as I got through that, then I switched over to Unitel as an engineer on a TV truck, because I realized you can't support a family on music. You know, you just don't, especially, you know, at that point, there was a couple big trucks around. Now there aren't, because they don't want us taking up the space. So I got into Unitel, did that, and then looked at freelancers and said, wow, they actually make like real money. And not what, you know, I'm on salary at 3 a.m. when it's a blizzard, I'm making 37 cents an hour. And the guys who just got released are making $100 an hour back then. So I got into that, and I knew how to do intercom because of being a truck guy. So when intercom first started, as Pete knows, when intercom first started, if you could make it work, you were God. You know, you're like, wow, it actually works. So that's a big part of what I do. That's half of what I do is comm work and Bolero, Riedel. And I like patching, you know, which is on shows now, which we thought fiber was going to, you know, make it easier on us. Now we just have 5 times as many inputs now because we can get that many places. So I don't know that I'm where I thought I'd be. I'm very happy I'm where I am, and I feel very honored to work with folks like you, and to be in this business and be able to, you know, have my family, my grandkids, and all that. So it's.
Is there anything you would say to new kids? Have a question from Ryan Riddell. I'm a middle school technical director. One of the hardest things to do is inspire kids to want to do the job of an A2. It's an incredibly important position, and we run anywhere from 20 to 30 RF labs. A few words of wisdom for the next generation to convince them that they really don't want to mix a show. They want to be the A2.
Well, a good thing you're not as much in the hot seat when you're the A2. I mean, once you get everybody mic'd up, and then when it, you know, the shit hits the fan, it's the A1 who's in the hot seat at that point, which is one reason I never wanted to be a A1. But I think the big thing that I see with kids is the work ethic, and listen to us old guys. That, you know, that's how I learned. I learned from other guys, listening to them and telling me and asking questions and being respectful. And I don't see a lot of that. You know, with the schools and all that around, people come out and think they know what they know. And there's a lot to learn out here. If I don't learn something every day, I've had a bad day. So work hard, and realize that, you know, if you want to get in it, you got to work hard. It'll be a great thing. You'll have great friends. And it's, you know, when you see when you pull a show off that looked to be impossible, it feels really good.
Yeah, I would agree there. And Mark, I think why don't you take kind of the same questions, which is how did you start? Are you doing what you thought you would be doing? What would your recommendations be to young people, and just kind of your general view on the role that you're in now, because you're a little broader as well. You're staying in, you know, having plants like WGN radio and TV and video. You've tried to make sure that you have your fingers in a lot of areas. Why don't you just kind of help us understand how you got there?
Yeah, it all started back when my parents decided it would be a good thing to get me a cassette recorder for a birthday present. And since then, it was anything with a microphone was, you know, I was all over that. That lasted all the way through high school, where I went through a radio program there. And then into college, I discovered television. And, you know, at that point, I started to realize that, you know, anything that had to do with capturing performance, be it visual or oral, I was really interested in, and how to use the technology to make all of that work. And, you know, since then, I've just been able to drill down pretty much at all levels and learn every bit of technology I come across. So that's pretty much everything from theater to television. I'm like Gaff, I built a lot of TV trucks, probably between 20 and 25 different TV trucks over my career. Those have an incredible amount of technology in them, from the early days of color analog through the transition to digital, and then high definition and ultra high definition, and all of the signal transport changes that have happened that have gone along with that. It's all been of interest to me, and I've always dove into the deep end of the pool early on to try and learn as much as I can. So from an audio standpoint, that's really where my love is, to do that. So when I'm not designing or building stuff, I'm A1 or A2ing, because I think that that's one of the more challenging jobs in any production. But people don't really realize that. But it's very intricate, very detail oriented. All those things are things I like to be involved with and to do. And Pete, kudos to you on your paperwork lunch break. I really enjoyed seeing that, because I do a lot of those things as well. But
Pete's website too, we've all jumped on quite a few times to get answers, pinouts, and whatever. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no worries. As far as telling young folks what to do and what to look at and what to consider as they're trying to get into a career in any of these disciplines, and if they're especially interested in audio, there's a lot of challenging hurdles out there. If you like a good challenge, this is one of them, because there's a lot of great new technology that a lot of the younger folks should be able to fold right into, that most of us old truck dogs or theater people have had to learn via hard knock. But as we transition into these newer transport standards and start to fold in more IT-based technologies for video, for audio, for intercom, audio and intercom, I kind of keep those all under one umbrella. But a lot of kids have got a good solid foundation in IT just because that's what they grew up with. We grew up with baseball bats and basketballs and things like that. Nowadays, and nowadays, it's pretty much right out of the gate. Kids are learning IT technologies and how to use them and how to get from point to point with that,
right.
just so that they can.
That's a good point. Let's bring on everybody else. Click your cameras on here. We're going to do the IT IP enablement, right? This is like the hot topic, right? Everything. So
everything's IT now.
Right. So let's go around real quick. I'm going to start with Jenny and Reece. Tell us just really quickly, how do you see IP and IT? I'll use those kind of interchangeably in your jobs. Do you see that that's something that you're having to embrace differently? I'm short of giving somebody the Wi-Fi code, all right? Because that's what everybody always wants to know as soon as they walk up. Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code for the show, right? But besides that, in your active day-to-day work, what do you see in theater with that? Reece, I'll go to you first on that one.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last few years, the backbone of the system is pretty much become digital. A lot of the shows become digital, and it's an optical loop, it's audio over Dante, or some other networked system. And even if we don't set it up, we need to be able to maintain it. For listening to mics, it's a lot of shows using Wave Tool now, where a couple of years ago it was an analog system. So it's everything. It's unavoidable, and it's great when it works, and then when it doesn't, you need to be able to fix it. So
yeah. Jenny, your thought on IT, IP, data, whatever it is?
Sometimes it terrifies me, quite honestly, because I don't know much about it. I was just talking with a friend a couple of weeks ago. She had some students down from Ithaca College, and they know that stuff. And I was like, well, come here and teach us, because so many, I feel like I'm behind on it, because so much of what I do, I'm hands-on with the talent. I'm not dealing with that as often. I am aware of it enough to be aware for some flow, but otherwise we're behind.
Well, and I think, as you pointed out, there's different at different points in your role. What do I need to know? Do I need to know everything, or do I need to be conversational, right? And that's kind of how it feels right now on a lot of this stuff. Is I need to be able to conversation with it, so I understand how it's going to impact me. But maybe I'm not managing it. Dave, I know, we've talked many a times, Dave Chessman and I, about these different topics. You're going to be far more hands-on with the technology than, say, what Jenny would normally be on a given show, on a day. What's your feeling here?
I think it is everything at this point. We are living in a digital world. I spend a lot of my time dealing with IT, dealing with intercom over IP. It's anybody coming into the business needs to know at least the basics of networking. It is, Dante is not going away. It is the future. It's not the only option. There's lots of other good ones out there, but it definitely is a big one. And the more you know about that, the better off you're going to be.
Right. And so Ryan, Sarah, I know the time you folks are spending behind the rack, whether that's your wireless mics, wireless PLs, that's a two position job, right? You may be out at the moment miking somebody else, right, and capturing a mic, or you may be in back reprogramming. What are your thoughts? Sarah, I'll let you start with, IT/IP. What are some tools you're using to try and to better understand?
Well, I'm, like Dave said, and everybody said, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? So I'm using my own Wi-Fi to monitor RF. I'm troubleshooting Dante, troubleshooting FreeSpeak or HelixNet and all of that stuff. And, you've got to have you've got to have a really good sense of signal flow and just path, right? You got to make sure your system is set up in a clean way so that when something goes wrong, you know exactly where to go to fix it, because you're constantly flipping. Like you said, one second you might be miking talent, and then there's an intercom problem in the back, and you've got to switch that gear immediately and run backstage and know where to go immediately. So it's really a big balancing act of having kind of both sides of your brain going all the time,
And Ryan?
I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. What are your thoughts there, other than the same? Because obviously a lot of this is the same, but your own personal workflow. What do you? How you
organization? Being organized and knowing what your IT structure is. I mean, pretty much everything we touch these days has an IP address, and whether that's a static network or a DHCP network, you got to have a basic understanding of those networks and how you're going to utilize them, so that when you do have those problems, you know exactly which one you're dealing with and the obvious solutions for those things. It's it's IT with a little bit of audio thrown in now, it seems, but yeah, it's definitely not going the other direction. We're basically need to have an IT backbone.
Well,
there's not a lot of AV. I know you guys are doing a class next week or this week about networking. That's going to be great, because there's not a lot of AV specific networking classes where I know a lot of us are just kind of figuring it out on our own, and being consistent, having organization, those are pretty important things.
I just wanted to add in on that, the IT part of it is just signal transport and distribution. The endpoints are still going to be primarily what we have been used to all of these years. There's still going to be an XLR cable that connects to an endpoint that packetizes that audio and then puts it on the network. So we're still going to need to have a solid understanding of the older technology and how it gets implemented, but add on that we've removed the traditional pair of copper that connects from point A to point B and replaced it with a network to get from point A to point B. So there's two disciplines there that we're going to need to have in our toolboxes moving forward. Actually, it has been like that for quite a while now, at least at our level. But to get the youth involved, they're going to have to learn some of the old and learn some of the new, and bring it all together. And as an A2, as we all know, and has been pointed out, in 1 second we're putting a mic on somebody, and then all of a sudden your intercom pops off your ear that, hey, I just lost a switch, or I just lost a chunk of intercom or whatever, and then you've got to go and take care of that. And that's going to involve old discipline and new discipline to be able to troubleshoot that, because the end points are going to remain the same. So
that's what I was thinking too, is that the troubleshooting now becomes a little more convoluted, because you do have analog on either end, but then it was a lot easier in the past to troubleshoot. A piece of copper goes from here to here, even when fiber first came out, but now it goes from here into a switch and becomes something that we're all learning about at this point. And it makes the troubleshooting, you have to think about it differently than I have in the past, which is one thing that all of us do a lot of too, is troubleshooting problems. Whether we know what we're doing or not, we have to make it work.
We got to look like we're trying to fix it, even if we have no idea what caused it to break, right? And I'm going to take Pete's cue here that tools, right? Because this is troubleshooting. That's a great point that everybody's been making. Pete, why don't you take us through some of that?
Why don't we just go around the group here? Now, obviously, I showed a cue box and a sound bullet, which is used for injecting and listening to audio and testing comm. But other items, list two other items that you are essential to you when you're on a job. Mark?
Well, Pete, I'd like to say I've got as nice a spectrum analyzer as you, but I do not. But I do have a spectrum analyzer. It's a little RF Explorer, and I like that because it fits nicely into my day bag. And if I need anything more than the low resolution screen on that, then I can plug it into my laptop, and I've got a nice, a decent spectrum analyzer.
Gaff? Let's keep it simple and get around the whole group.
Yeah, well, I've been for the good or the bad, been known with the guy who brings a full Pelican full of every tool known to man, soldering irons, the whole thing.
That doesn't count as one thing.
Yeah, well, kind of. And a cue box, like you said, you can't do your job without one. And I always have a knife in my pocket, which is also very, useful.
Exactly. Reece? Reece?
Send receive cable testers, just so that at least the copper's working. Cat5, BNC, XLR.
You mean like this?
Yeah, something like that.
Cat5. What else would you? Ethernet tester?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Make sure all those pairs are working.
Beyond what's mentioned, the Ethernet cable certifier, fiber scope. It's everything to make sure that the medium works before you get to the IT side.
Fiber meter, I forgot that. That's one of the most important things now.
Yep. And a light just to squirt
and a light source.
Fiber.
Visual fault detector. It's a great tool. They're very inexpensive, and 9 times out of 10, if you're not dealing with dirt, there's been a fault in the fiber, and the VFL will show you that it's broke right here at the back of the connector. Time to replace this strand of fiber. Yeah, hey, don't.
Oh, I can't see. I'm blind. How come every show Pete makes me look at the fiber first, and then he does that? I think he's got it out for me.
Here, Ryan,
Ryan,
put that right in your eyeball. Make sure you see it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Ryan, what are your two favorite things that nobody's ever mentioned yet?
I'm a big fan of the lav bullet for
there we go.
using
Perfect.
to put a weight on a microphone to drop it through people's clothes. It makes it a little faster.
Nice.
It works really well, and it kind of gets you through the process. It gets out of people's personal space faster. Top stick is great for and if you're doing a lavalier on something, you can keep their shirt or something against their chest.
Perfect.
Magnets, got a lav magnet here.
Yep.
Different kinds of magnets.
In other words, the whole kit of ways to put your mic.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of time to make the decision on how you're going to mic somebody. So having all the tools you need right at your hands is pretty handy.
The lav bullet is nice. That's probably why I get such an ugly face from people I'm miking when I use this to drop the mic through their shirt. You know, I don't know.
It's a little bulky.
Exactly.
Oh, we can't take him out in public.
Sarah?
Probably the simplest thing that I use every single time is a P-Touch labeler. I'm obsessive about labeling, and especially in corporate when there's the show's changing every day, or you're doing 5 or 6 different shows and you got 25, 40 different presenters. I print out everybody's name and I put it on a piece of e-tape, and I label those mics incessantly so that I know that the right one goes on the right person. It can be just so fast-paced, you have to do it.
And it looks good to the client.
Right.
If everything's all organized in labels, if they're all scribbled with Sharpie on a piece of tape, they don't say anything about it. It does the job, but it's not quite nearly as good. Jenny?
Right. There's not much left. I guess a Sharpie and a Leatherman, go-to.
There you go.
Nobody mentioned the Sharpie really yet. So the Sharpie is the big thing. And also
scissors. I mean,
yep. Scissors.
Our kits are all very deep.
A good flashlight.
Good flashlight.
Gotta have a good flashlight. Scissors are my favorite. I stopped carrying my Leatherman years ago and just now carry an electrician scissors, which I guess I don't have on the table here, strangely enough.
Yeah.
But
a new pair of scissors.
I find I was cutting things more than plunging a knife into the cable bundle. Tweakers. Torque.
Right, the greenie.
Yep.
Gotta have your greenie.
A small universal mic kind of adapter. It has torques and all the different kinds of things, because sure enough, you'll have to get inside some piece of equipment and you'll need one of those strange Chinese connectors. Top stick. Another great thing for sticking mics on.
I've been using lots of moleskin lately.
Moleskin, yes. I mean, Broadway people tend to have a whole kit, giant kit of hair pins and.
We could do another whole hour on that stuff.
Oh yeah, easily. And
we probably will. Now, shelter in place is giving us probably a programming time. Mark, you had something?
Another thing nobody mentioned was a Widowmaker. My belt pack has a Widowmaker in it, which for people who don't understand that term, it's an AC adapter that goes from 3-pin to 2-pin or ground lifter people.
Oh, yeah.
I don't recommend using that except for the very last effort to try and eliminate a buzz, because unfortunately, even though we've talked a lot about the different transports, fiber, IT, whatnot, there's still the majority in the sports world, at any rate, the majority of the infrastructure in professional and collegiate stadiums is all copper. So we're still dealing with a lot of grounding issues that can help alleviate. But you do need to be careful if you're going to use something like that. But I always have one there. And I also, in that same vein, I also carry a small voltmeter, which is useful for all kinds of troubleshooting things.
Right.
Yeah, I had one of those $25 Radio Shack multimeters that I used to meter all of the BTR packs when they came in at the end of the day, because 50% of them had more than 8 volts. And if it has more than 8 volts, it's good for another period. So I would not even open up the 6 battery packs if it had more than 8.
So that's why we love Bolero, 24 hours on one charge.
I have nothing to do now. I sit around and look at all those batteries and say, run, run, run.
If only that was
make
true.
Sure on the screen I can, okay, this person must be talking a lot. He's getting down to 50% and it's only like 5 o'clock.
Right. So I would like, before we leave tools, I'll just do a quick review because I do remember we had that individual asking about the middle school, right? And about, I know we're gonna have universities and colleges watching this. So what I heard were 3 big buckets of tools. We have our traditional hand tools, right? And in that, I'm gonna include Sharpies, Greenies, scissors, Leathermans, right? Some way to carry that on yourself, right? Whether that's a backpack, whether that's a fanny pack, whether that's, whatever tool pouch, having it prepared with you, right? Being there, ready to go, right? And then the second bucket is little more audio focused tools. Those would be like pin 1 lifts, the ground lift that Mark judiciously suggested, an ISO box, right? If you're living in, you need to dry a 2-wire up, or you just need to get a BTR to quit buzzing, right? Because as soon as you plug a BTR into an RTS, buzz is guaranteed. It comes with everything, right?
It's not extra, it's free.
Right, it's free. And it, and those are turnarounds, right? Those are just, those little bits, right? And then we have at the upper end of the spectrum are more precision or specific tools, RF Explorer or an RF analyzer of some sort, perhaps. It's going to be LAN checkers. I'd almost move like a Cat 5 checker into the same category as that number 2 slot that you really should have, the same way you'd have, a Q box kind of became that. Q box used to be at the top of the list, right? You're going to pick up your Q box and then you're going to have that with all your adapters. Q box became an essential tool, right? And now we have, whether it's DB Box 2, where you can listen to AES, all these kind of things. So those upper end, and those obviously, you can go up to tens of thousands of dollars for analyzers, or you can, get into fiber scopes. But the fundamental of, do I have a fiber cleaner? That's something I'm thinking about for myself right now, is like, well, what are some things I need to add to my kit that, I don't need to do diagnostics.
Yeah.
But I probably should be prepared to clean that end off, right?
Well, that's where I think, just to jump in, the fiber meter, because you can get them now for a meter and a light for $50, $56. You don't need to certify fiber. You want to know that at the source it's -8, and at the 1,000 feet out it's -5, -10. So you say, okay, I got good light. It's getting there. It'll save you so much time, because just because you can see light on a piece of fiber doesn't mean it works.
That's 100% true. Pete has a great little fiber scope there. It's got a bit of a price tag on it, but it lets you see
$500.
It lets you see
that's
the
not
tip.
bad.
Yeah, it's good. But you can also get a fiber microscope that will let you look at it for under $100.
Sure.
And
Except
you'll still be able to see the tip.
This probe comes with something that can stick in to equipment and see inside the equipment, and it has tips and ends for every different kind of fiber connection you might ever run up. And normally it used to cause, this is a JDSU something number, but JDSU
HP60, I think.
Yeah, and if you look around on eBay, it's around $500-600 with all kinds of great adapters, and it's really.
I'm pretty sure your family member is selling that on eBay. The way you've been plugging this, absolutely
my last
amazing.
Name is JDSU, exactly.
I'm telling you, we use fiber on every single session we're doing. All right.
My point is if you're standing out at the 50-yard line, 20 minutes before the kickoff goes, and your Hydra box goes down, you want to be able to look at the fiber and make sure it's clean. Even though usually once you make a fiber and it's it's taught and you're getting light through it, it's going to be good. But you still want to have something on your belt, and that's Pete's box is fantastic. But you can get a little microscope that will hang onto your belt, and
sure,
it'll work good.
Well, in the worst case, you can always have a couple fiber guys, as long as you have cotton jeans on, pull it out, do one little swipe in your cotton jean and plug it back in. And I've had it work many times.
Absolutely. It's not recommended, but if you've got the right tools to do it, but if you've got nothing else.
If you don't.
It's right. You move the dirt off the tip and you're up and running. So it might not still be clean.
Even if you don't have a little microscope, which is ideal, if you clean it, you're probably going to fix the problem, because more often than not, you clean it just a simple little pop with the clicker tool, and you cleaned it. At least you're better than not doing it.
Right. So,
exactly.
So I think we got through the tools there. I wanted to touch just briefly. We're doing okay on time. We got a lot of info to get through, and I appreciate if everybody's still good. Let's keep moving. The paperwork, right? Every single part of our industry has a little different way of doing things. Because it's just kind of lined on my screen. I'm going to start with you, Reece and Jenny. Can you talk to us? You have probably the most formal, other than broadcast, the most formal workflow, because you have a designer you're working with, and you kind of have a hierarchy that's a little different. Can you guys share with us kind of what your paperwork flow is on that?
Reece, go ahead and take that, because you've been doing a little more of that recently.
Yeah, between the designer and the associate designer, there's a lot of paperwork. There's a huge amount of paperwork generated for the system flow, how it all gets put together, what it looks like, where it goes. IP schedules now are incredibly important. So when you have that network with hundreds of static IPs, you know what everything is. But drawings, it's all very laid out. There are FileMaker databases to manage cable labels, bundles, where everything goes. It is very specific. For myself, I'll take all of that and implement it. And then when I'm going to label transmitters, label microphones, receivers, sort of my world backstage, I'll do my own thing as well on top of that to sort of lay it out the way I want, whether that's my own FileMaker database or P-Touch labels or whatever the right format is, the right material for the specific application. But it is incredibly specific. Everything, it's tape on tape on tape to get it all there, and it needs to last. I mean, we on an open-ended Broadway musical, we're putting the show in to run forever. That's the idea. So you know, it's not just today or this week or this month, but you know, hopefully those labels will still be there in you know, years.
Cats now and forever.
The show's still going. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Your shows have a lot more legs, don't they, than a you know, typical sporting event that might load in the morning and then, you know, be on the air and then out that night. Yeah. That's an excellent point, Jenny.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I've been in the opera world more recently than the Broadway world, what I've been doing is I don't deal with the designer in the same way. Like oftentimes I'm just given information like, we'll be miking these 3 or these 6 performers for this show. But because the Metropolitan Opera works in a rep situation, we could be doing up to 25 different shows in a season. And that show might come back the next season. It may not come back for 5 more seasons. So each one of every time I need to mic someone for a particular performance, I'm documenting all of that. I do what I call face pages, and I'll do, you know, information about the show at the top, what season it is, who's playing that character, the character's name, a picture of the person who will be playing said character, because oftentimes within the run of a show, I might end up with 3 different performers, 3 different singers singing that same role within one season. So I'll put, that's all documentation that I get from our rehearsal department. And I'll put that on to that page so that when I come in, I can look at it and go, oh, on March 31st, we're going to have so-and-so playing this role. Then I'll also take pictures of, we'll document where is the mic placed on the person. Is it back here underneath the wig? Is it in natural hair? Is it maybe in a lapel? All that's documented. And then I have books and books like on a shelf full of shows and that information, so that when we get into the next season, we can go through with our list of shows that we know have been mic'd in the past and pull out those documents and put them into our current season's book. But there's just a lot of, you know, it's a lot of the same, but you just have to stay on top of your documentation, because you don't want the next person, like if I'm not the A2 that evening, if we have somebody else filling in for me, they need to have that information.
Yeah, the track sheet is a very important thing. Being able to give somebody a piece of paper that has the cues, who you're looking for,
right.
Like ideally, you know, character names, actors get replaced with a new actor, and so the character is important. But I've definitely handed a track sheet to somebody and they've run the show cold. Sometimes that's just the situation. Pardon?
Do you include photos of the actors on your track sheets?
Yeah, I do the same. The face page, so that somebody has a reference.
Yeah.
This is this person. This is who they play. You know, and then you can walk
right.
around.
So you're not guessing.
Yeah, I did a RF coordination job on a show that had 190 lav mics on it, and the A2 area was the size of a small ballroom, and they had tables laid out with everybody's mics laid out in areas with names on it. But they also had a 4x5 photo of the person, and when the people came to get mic'd up, they had to have a piece of paper with their name and what they were going to have put on them, because it wasn't it was a musical show that didn't have a lot of rehearsal, so they just had to know it and get it done.
Yeah.
Reece and I
go ahead.
I was saying, Reece and I also worked together on a number of the NBC Live performances. So that was like a crossover between the Broadway world and the television world, where we were doing more Broadway style miking for television. And did we have face pages? But we definitely did do, in the bottom of the tins, we put people's names, their photographs. We had like all their information in the tins and on the transmitters. Yeah. Just because we had so many to deal with and had to be consistent.
It had to be consistent, and the performers care that they get the right thing, that they want to look good, they want to sound good. So, you know, we all work together and make sure the right people get the right stuff consistently. But yeah, there's not always time. Sometimes on a Broadway show, there's tons of time, and you learn everybody's name before you ever meet them. And sometimes it's go.
Make all that paperwork, or does your A1 hand it to you, or does it evolve during rehearsals?
A lot of that paperwork, a lot of the information we'll get from stage management or wardrobe sometimes, because they usually have a little bit more of a head start on who they are, who the cast is, because they've been doing fittings and stuff for a while longer than we even think about mics. So we'll get that information from them, or the designer, the associate designer, sound designer.
Will the stage manager seek you out with that information, or do you have to go find them?
No, we have to go glean that information.
Yeah.
What can the A1 do to make the A2's job easier? And this is the question for everybody. In this regard, I feel like we're usually generating that information and sharing it with the A1, because I always feel like they have their own fires to put on. They're dealing with learning to mix the show. Well, not necessarily in regards to the paperwork, but in general, what can the A1 do to help you out? You always wish your favorite A1, I'm not naming any here, would do to help you out.
I don't know. I think there are certain conversations with management, creatives that are better had by the A1. And then there are a lot of conversations that I'm happy just to have on my own and keep it off their radar. They, like Jenny said, they've got a whole host of other things to be thinking about. So as much as I can just kind of set my world up, get stuff done, and on Broadway, eventually I go, the A2 often will go out and learn to mix the show. So the A1 is going to end up backstage running the track the A2 sets up often. So they'll learn it all at some point. But
yeah, I think sometimes too, we need them to be an advocate for us, that sometimes we're sent in to put a mic on somebody and we might get pushback. That, we've all gotten that in various ways. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you've got to run it up the food chain, like, okay, can you come talk to them? Because you really need to, whether it's
when you need authority.
Yeah. It's like, don't make me get dad. You need to get like somebody else in there to actually
stop this car. Exactly.
Right. But sometimes
unrealistic time schedules. They have to jump in for us and say, look, our guys cannot do this in the schedule that you people want to do this. Because we don't know some of that a lot of times, and that's the big help.
And your A1 won't know it until you tell them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I heard a few things here that interest me. One is Jenny talked about her books, right? Which kind of is very much an analog process, and partly because that individual needs to, if someone's coming to fill in or you're trading positions, they need to physically have that in front of them, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I had about that is, do you see any transitions to electronic, meaning, sharing on like a locked platform? Because let's be honest here, a lot of this information is what makes us valuable to our customers. I mean, that's how we manage what we do, right? There isn't magic in paperwork, but there's an enormous amount of magic in paperwork, right? And how do you find that collaboration? And then I'll ask everybody else, how do you normally get your paperwork and from your different folks? So I'll start, since I pointed that to you, Jenny. Why don't you start with that, with your book and electronics, and we'll go from there.
It is my hope and dream to get it all digitized. It's because of just where we started 10 years ago, and it was just easy to just continue just putting the paper in the book. And we did have some of the information got lost early on an old computer, but it is something that I hope to do, to get that all digitized. And those are conversations that have started happening within the media department.
I can't wait for that book to come out. I'm sure it's a great read.
Be an Amazon bestseller,
right.
But like Gaff, talk to me about because your patch book is going to be a lot different, in some ways than everybody else's. When you've got, a Super Bowl halftime show, or you have a, I don't know, make it up 40 acts that are performing in an hour and a half time period.
Oh, paperwork is incredibly important, because without it, and you have to also think like Reece and Jenny were talking. In my case, not that you'll hand it off, but if something happens to you, you got to have paperwork there, especially when there's a patch. When there's 300 inputs, and it has to change for some things change for each act. So labeling is incredibly important on splitters, and knowing, and sometimes you can look at your paperwork and realize, wait, that's not going to work. And so you change it, but it's really, really, you can't stress more paperwork and labeling.
Is that Google Docs, or is that, Excel spreadsheets that are updated? How do you, I
get my paperwork from the A1 usually about who wants what, because I might have 5 mixers that needs parts of the split.
Right.
So, and then I developed my own sheets that list everybody and what they get. and all that. It changes so much if I had to go digitally change it every time.
Do you use Google Sheets?
We do sometimes for the main list, but not for
So
my
everybody
patch
can edit it and watch it, and it's dynamically edited, right?
Yeah, for the main patch sheets. But a lot of what you have to do as people who patch know is sometimes the way you have to get things places, like on honors at Kenny said, because they have a great infrastructure. The mixers don't need to know how I get things to them. They don't want to know.
They just want to know it lands on their right handle, right?
Yeah. Correct. If you tell me what fader you want it on, and I'll get it there. But how it gets there, they don't need to know. I need to know. So I keep all that, very structured.
Gotcha.
And I know from doing comms that I'm always asked for one or more of the stage managers to have a direct line to the A2s, because they're the ones who are going to be stuck with a performer who doesn't have a mic or need mic fixed or something like that. They don't care about the A1, they care about the A2, the person that's actually going to help them and is in the trench with them.
Now, do you guys,
anybody else?
I have a question. Do you guys use iAnnotate when you're running a show? Do you have like your rundowns with your annotations and carry an iPad with you? Or
Skip
do you
does
have your
all
patches?
the time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I like a piece of paper in my back pocket.
Same
so
here.
He'll do them and then he prints them for us old guys.
Yeah. And then I also do spreadsheets, and I can, like doing an award show, the Tonys, I can take that information on a spreadsheet and have chunks of like, I know who's performing in the first performance, and that tracks through to the fourth performance, and can just kind of end up running the whole show off of a spreadsheet in the end.
The spreadsheet's
helpful.
I
have to be too, because I got to patch different inputs for different bands. I have to go to different places. I need to know where I can do that when we're in commercial or whatever. And I've learned that I lose my paperwork, so now I carry a clipboard and I put it on a clipboard because it's harder to lose a clipboard.
Or at least can have your name. Anybody else? Ryan, Mark, Dave?
I like to, I personally like to create the mic assign list for the corporate stuff that I do. I'm typically the one who's going to know when, say, a headset changes to a lavalier way faster than the A1 might know. I keep in direct contact with the ASMs. Usually I create like what I call a mic channel on comms that they can speak directly to me about any changes when talent's there to get mic'd. But I like to keep track of the mics. I base labels. I make labels like Sarah does that print on all my packs for all of my events. So I don't have to find the paperwork. I lose paperwork when it's printed out. So I have all that stuff digitally, and I make labels from it as well, which is pretty helpful.
Dropbox is great too.
Not only with all your,
I'm a big fan of Dropbox.
Having your name on all your paperwork, so when you leave
and your picture, Pete.
Yep, I still lose it.
Of course, it's in yellow, but and it really should.
It should be your hair.
Exactly. but I have often found a detailed sheet laying next to my desk and no name on it. I have no idea who it belongs to.
Yeah.
I find Dropbox for pre-productions very useful, and then I like Google Sheets for the day of run of show. But I find for pre-production, being able to track versions is a little bit helpful.
Do you ever have problems in Google Sheets with people updating things that are wrong or overwrite things that you're doing? Bill Sautzer said, be careful with that because it could mess the whole sheet up.
I haven't had that issue personally, but typically I'm working with a group and we've all agreed to a method or a system.
Right.
And there's definitely one person who is the primary decider. It could be the A1, it could be the A2 on a corporate show.
We use Google Sheets to organize this webinar between Kelly and I and Mac and Bruce Kramer and my son Harlan, who does the website. And we're always changing things and sliding lines around and changing the schedule and changing descriptions. And when it's all in there, it's marked as ready to go. And Harlan can just post it to the website, and go.
Yeah, as long as Pete's not overwriting my information, we're pretty good.
I was able to fix that. I was able to fix that with a little Control Z. Don't worry about that.
Exactly. Now, Sarah, I got a question for you on this. When it comes to the paperwork, do you define expectations with the A1 or with the other system? If you have a system engineer with you, how do you determine who's responsible for what? What are your expectations? Do you even talk about it? There is no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on how the pre-production kind of came about. If the A1 was also sort of the audio PM or the designer or whatever, they're leading the charge on that. And as an A2, I just come in and kind of take the ball and run with it. And then it also depends on the relationship too. Like if it's somebody that I've worked with a lot and I trust, and I can throw things out and say, hey, this is a better way to do this. Can we rethink this? You know, patch sheet. Can I move some stuff around on you or whatever? You know, it's a personal thing, but a lot of times, at least in my experience, it's been the audio PM or the A1 who kind of leads the charge, and then I have to kind of adapt. And every A1 I work with is different, has a different flow, has a different work, you know, environment. Some people like paper, some people like Google Sheets, and so I sort of find out that I just use them all. I just end up changing every week on whatever it is, you know, and it's just it's a matter of being flexible.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, Mark, you and I have a couple friends in common that I was used to getting sheets that were DT12 blanks, right? And so then you'd show up in the morning and the DT would get filled out as soon as we parked and powered, right? And do you find, I mean, sometimes that's still usable, frankly. What are some of the mechanisms you're seeing right now?
Well, in the local sports world, and even at the national scene, a lot of it goes back to what Sarah was just saying. It depends on your relationship with the A1. You know, a lot of times, you know, you walk into a job and you've never met the A1. He's never met you. She's never met you. Whatever the case may be. And you got to figure out how to get that all put together and who's going to be in charge of what. And the A1 will say, I've got this much I need to get accomplished. I need these microphones. I need these IFBs. I need these intercoms. And let's figure this out. If it's a venue that neither of us have ever been in, then, you know, there's a little more hunting and pecking. If it's something I'm familiar with, or he's familiar with, he or she is familiar with, then we'll take, you know, that person will take the lead and fill out those sheets and then start the job, run the wires and get it hooked up and get it going. So the paperwork and who's in charge of it at the local level and sometimes at the national level. If you've got local knowledge, you're going to be more valuable than the guy that's coming in that has never been there before. So the paperwork can get handed off at that point once once it's decided, you know, who's going to make the most expeditious and correct decision to get the job up and on the air.
Yeah, so it sounds like there in that scenario, your A1 saying, hey, these are my booth inputs that I'm going to need. These are my, you know, field inputs, things like that. And then a lot of times you'll connect the dots then of how that is going to get from point A to point B, or if you're the one mixing, same thing with the A2 that you're working with, right? So lot of different mechanisms here. This one's kind of a big gear shift from everything, but I'm gonna pull these two together. One is recruiting the next generation and trying to find and in the process of doing that, capturing especially the females in audio, right? So we have both recruitment, because a lot of this is it seems to skip a generation, right? So everybody's working, and then, you know, it's like, oh, I don't see a lot of new people coming in, right? And now, all of a sudden, I seem to see an interest in that. Maybe that's because, you know, my son's in university now and he's studying audio technology, so it's a little fresher in my mind. But just in general, you see those cycles, and what do you see your role in trying to promote our industry and the job that you do, because obviously everybody on this screen is making a living, not at this very moment, but before and after all this is over, this industry has treated us very well.
Yes.
And we've all found a lot of satisfaction and the ability to make a living, which I'm very thankful that I'm doing something I have a passion for, and I can feed my family, and I can have some nice things in life from working hard. So I know that's really broad, but recruitment, and then specifically to your point, I did have some more female representation. Unfortunately, Jess was not feeling well today and she couldn't join us. So just so you know, I'm working on that, because I think that's a very important component of this. If for any reason that our people we're working with, our end clients, whether that's talent on TV or whether that's Broadway talent or opera or in corporate presentation, we're seeing more and more female representation, and a female CEO didn't come up through Broadway, isn't used to how Broadway and television production works, right? And so as a designer in A1 myself, I try to be sensitive to those kind of things, because those can be unique situations. Since Jenny and Sarah, I'll start with the gender component and then move that to recruitment as well, right? Can you guys weigh in on that for me?
Do you want to take it, Sarah?
Anybody want to?
Yeah,
What is this, like the third rail? Did I just create a third rail? Because that's not what I mean to do here.
No, I think it's an important conversation to have. I think we need to talk about it. I think as long as gender exists in the world, it will affect our industry, and it's something that is something that we all deal with and have to think about. You know, I try really hard to not make it an issue. I don't think that it's important. Right. You know, I don't think that. I don't want people to know me as a woman first. I want people to know me as an audio engineer first, and
exactly.
as Sarah first. And so that's sort of how I go into everything that I do. Obviously, I've encountered situations where people see me as a woman first, and you just sort of have to navigate that and know that there are plenty of people who don't see me that way, and those are the people that I try to foster. I try to be around those people. I try to find those peers who see me as an equal, and then and I do the same for other women that I see, other women that I admire that are working hard. I sort of recruit them. Same thing, as much as I recruit anyone. You know what I mean? But you just have to know that it's there, and then we can all kind of move past it and start dealing with each other as audio engineers. You know, and so I think the men that I've worked with that are the people that I like to work with aren't people who are ignoring it or saying it's not there, but they're the men who say, you know what, it's an issue, and I'm going to think about how I do things, and I'm going to make sure that I, reach out to people as equally as I can, interdependent, independent of gender. And I think it's important to at least talk about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that in the beginning, I was going to be a lighting designer. Somewhere along the way, after moving to New York, I wandered into audio, and working in one of the shops back in ProMix back in the day. And I was like, okay, I can do this. It's a little change of gears, but we'll do this. And when I first started getting A2 gigs, it was always prefaced with, they need a woman. And there was always a little bit of like, I understand, however, at the same time, I was always fighting to make sure that not all gigs I was getting was because they needed a woman. Are you hiring me because I'm capable of doing the job, or was it because of my gender? And that was something that, I had to kind of weigh for a while. Like, do I want to keep doing this? And do I fight this? Or do I just go, I'll take the gig, and just run with it? I mean,
unfortunately, the gender issue where I need a woman comes from possibly from panelists or guests on the show that are women.
I'm fully aware.
And that I think is a sensitivity that we are obvious, but the key element for any A2 is how organized you are. You're the organizer of what is really going on, almost more than the director.
Right. But like I was saying, this was in the beginning, you know.
Right.
Baby A2, like still figuring out the gig. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so far beyond that at this time, but that in the beginning. But I have, you know, been in situations where there were other, you know, going back to the personality, to the organization and different things. But I have had women in other departments kind of look at me and go like, wow, how can I do what it is that you do? How can I do? And I'm like, yeah, but I've got like years of knowledge from working in a shop. I've got like, I didn't just like walk in and start doing this. Exactly. So it's like I think you were referencing earlier, I think it was Mark saying, the old technology with the new technology. It's not something that you just kind of like show up and put mics on people. You know, we worked hard for a very long time to, I guess, make it look easy. Or we tried to.
Yeah. And you know, having worked, go ahead, sir.
No, sorry. And I think to that end too, I mean, like, I think early on in my career, there were people who saw that I had a talent for audio, and those people saw that through my gender. They didn't say, oh, I just need a woman here. I mean, and I've also had shows. I did Billy Elliot for the national tour, and they had small, you know, young children. They needed a woman. There are times when that was an important component, but early on, I had people who were well established in the industry as advocates who saw that my talent for audio was there, and then they offered me the opportunity, you know, regardless of gender, which was
exactly. And I think that's the point here, is that by improving what we do, how we do, it's irrelevant, right? On this bigger scale. So I don't mean to take us into those deeper, because those are things that I am far less qualified to even dig into. But I my whole point to say, number one, I see people because of what they're capable of doing, right? I want the best performers around me, and everything else is irrelevant, right? I need people that have that proper attitude to interface, because the A2, you're out there out front. You're going to set the tone for the show, right? Because I guarantee you, if you're making it difficult for that person backstage, I'm getting that phone call from the producer, if I'm the person out front, going, what is up with your A2? All right, we need, and it's like, oh, seriously, I don't want to have this discussion, right? You know, so I want people around me that are qualified. That's the end of discussion, right? Everything else, irrelevant, right? So the recruitment is about exposing people, though, that haven't thought about the audio industry, right? That, hey, this is a viable job. And this is, these are the skill sets you're going to need to be really good and want to be the best. And I think that's the other part of it, is saying, I want to be the best at what I do, period. Right. End of discussion. If audio isn't your career where you want to do that, go find something where you can make that statement emphatically. I want to be the best that I can be, whatever that is. Right. So I didn't mean to make anybody uncomfortable with this, other than to say, I want the best people. And that's what I believe I have on the screen right now. So.
Well, Jenny's comment about,
ahead, Jenny.
I didn't start doing this. I wanted to be this or something else. And that's really sort of the start to the answer to how do I become an A2? You don't just walk into it the next day, because it is an extremely trusted job. And you have to, one, have an experience. Two, you have to have people you work with a lot to recommend you. You can never advertise for this job. You have to have people that recommend it, you want you to work with them. And three, you got to put in your 10,000 hours. So.
And Jenny, you had something to say.
I was saying, kind of part of that is that coming into the business, I didn't realize that this was a gig, you know, but I have had younger women coming out, you know, whether they were in high school or college, and come to me and say, I want to be an A2. I'm like, how do you even know what an A2 is? You know?
Right.
But I think technology has driven some of that.
I think so too. You know, I will take us away from this topic now. And, you know, Pete, what's our Q&A looking like there? You know, we've been kind
well, I will say that the Q&A has been a huge success for making comments. And there's more questions. I mean, we've got 108 questions in here, and we certainly couldn't cover in them. But in one way or another, we've covered all the subjects. And I think we're just going to have to let a lot of the questions speak for themselves, because you can read through them and see them. These questions will be online with the video of the event. Besides these comments and their answers to questions that have come up here, there have been comments on how they use Google Sheets and how they do their thing and what kind of tools they have in their bag and that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, this forum doesn't lend it well to some of these really detailed questions on, like John Center said, people like Tom Morris, Peter Erskine, Matt Kerr, Stuart Schwartz taught me well. I retired from Broadway 3 years ago. I'm willing to share my knowledge like we're doing now and experiences they did with me. Sometimes others want to listen and sometimes they don't. All current A2s who happen to be women owe a great debt to women such as Cindy Hawkins, Mary McGregor, and Stephanie Vetter, who blazed the trail as an A2. And I
Valerie
think
Spradling and
exactly. And
Eileen McDonald, yeah.
And I find in the industry, and I'm saying this from the heart, I find women to be much more organized and much better at managing a show than me, certainly. And I see this in directors. The women directors I work with are a pleasure compared to a lot of the men directors who are just a totally different person. But there's no real answer for how to get in this A2 business other than, follow somebody around like a puppy dog.
That's the thing. You got to be willing to listen to people. That's how I learned most of mine. Ask the right questions. Don't ask stupid questions, and listen. Don't just stare at somebody and not pay attention, and then do the same stupid thing over again.
And learn. And
right.
Gaff, to extend your point a little further, be willing to share without being prompted a little bit of knowledge that you've picked up along the way. When you see somebody maybe not doing something exactly the way you would, but they've never really been instructed or helped, you can give them a hand by saying, hey, maybe you can consider trying this approach next time. And I know, Pete, you're a big proponent of this, of knowledge.
I started my website to keep track of how I did things so I could remember.
Right. And I think we got to remember to listen to the younger kids too, and they have a good idea that we might go.
Sure.
I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And your way is better.
Well, no, my way is just my way. Right. There's a song about that, I think. I don't know. Yeah. So I think we can certainly, what was that iPad app, Jenny, you mentioned for keeping track of things, noting things?
I annotate.
Annotate,
yes. You can load like a PDF of a script into it, and then you can mark it up and kind of go page by page through it. And it's something that skips. Go ahead.
And when the page in the script changes?
Yeah. When there are script changes, you've got to go back in it.
So it's not like your notes don't stay with that page necessarily.
I'm usually I've only dabbled in it a little bit. Skip is usually the keeper of the annotated script, and then he distributes it to us.
And it's not a multi-user thing. It's just one iPad, one person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because he does it, and then after it's done, he does what they call flattening, and then he sends it out to everybody else. That way we can't manipulate or he can send it with the text where we can go in and manipulate it.
Joe Foley says
Joe.
Yeah, well, what can I say? Yeah. He says, seems many of my female friends in the audio field want to be the A1 as they don't want to necessarily get stuck in the assistant position. Well, I think you really have to turn that around. It's the A1 who's the assistant.
Yeah, I don't really think of A2s as assistants. I think that we're in charge of the stage end. The A1's in charge of the front of house end, and I think together you're working together to put together a complete show. But I don't feel below the A1 at all.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan, 100%.
Not on a well-organized show. It's a cooperative effort.
Oh, definitely.
Exactly.
I even see that in ASM jobs when a show is going along that isn't really scripted, like an honoree show sort of thing, you know. And the ASM on stage often ends up running the show. Okay, we've got this person waiting in the wings. Let's do it now, you know, that kind of stuff. And the same way with audio, you know, you have a running around putting mics on people, and you have to let everyone know what's happening. Oh, we're going to change into this mic. We're going to change this. We're not going with mic 13, but going mic 12. That kind of stuff, because it works better. Maybe because it just works better.
You know, and to the point of the younger generation coming in, I think we're seeing a flattening of that command control that maybe we started out in the industry. This comes down from this person to this person to this person, right? And what we're seeing is a flattening of the whole decision-making process, where people, which is really hard sometimes, because you have to live in this world where you're a peer, but you're also a subordinate at any given time, right? Maybe that producer's talking, you know, because Gaff made that point about the schedules where, well, sometimes I look to the A1 to go to the producer and say, hey, this schedule's unrealistic, right? Well, I need to have a conversation over here with a producer, but I also have to remember I work for them, right? Same thing in the teams, and I think we're going to continue to see that flattening of this, and we all need to work hard, because on a large show, you know, we could have multiple A1s, we could have multiple A2s, we could have an RF coordinator, a comms manager. And you know, I really hate the A3, A2, A1. You know, I'm like, I understand why we have the terminology,
right?
But I prefer to say I'm in audio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm the audio manager on a show. Maybe I'm the audio producer on some level, but I'm in audio, right?
It does have the connotation of being in order: A1 first, A2 next. You know, so.
That's just the order you get fired in.
That's just the blame hierarchy, exactly. Blame hierarchy.
But, good, because the A1 gets blamed first, right? Because he's one.
Right. But you know what? I will say this. It's very much like the captain goes down with the ship, right? Mm-hmm. At A1, you do look to say, hey, this is my team, all right? And I'm going to protect my team. Even if my team does have some shortcomings, I'm going to be the first to step up for them and go, hey, you know what? Yeah, we missed it on that one. We're gonna step up. We're gonna take responsibility for it, but I'm gonna protect my team, right? And it's audio. It's audio, right? It's not, you know, it's Kelly Epperson and then the rest of my team. No, it's audio. That's the way it is.
I wanted to emphasize what Jenny said about her book, in that you've always got to be ready for somebody to have to take your job over on the show. It's more important for the show to be a success than for you to be a success. So 40, 50 years ago, a long time, I did a show in Saudi Arabia, and it was a big industrial show, and I was the A1, and I had a lot of cues, and I got arrested an hour before the show. And they hauled me down to a police thing. And luckily I had the phone number backstage, called there and told the stage manager, Bob, now I can't remember his name. I told him, everything's in the book, just follow the book, you'll do the show fine. And they got through the show fine. And I only had to stay in Saudi Arabia for 3 more days under arrest. So.
I want to go so many directions with this, but I'm not going to. I'm working so hard, right? My inner voice right now just wants to explode.
Just an A1 job, exactly.
But I think to wrap this all up, you bring up an interesting point, and I want to bring this back to the very situation we're in right now, which is COVID. All right. And we started our discussion with it, and I'm going to end with it. And here's how I'd like to end with it. Where do you see something like this pointing to the need for Jenny's book, right, to now be shared, the cross discipline within the audio department? I'm not suggesting that I'm going to go over here to the LD next to me and go, hey, can I show you a couple things on my console just in case I'm not here tomorrow? That's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that within my team, everybody needs to know, because unfortunately, when we come out of this, there's a good chance that, you know, somebody will end up ill one day, right? And you know, they'll be gone for a week. But how do they step in, right? Or even if it's just a day, right? And so that trust, I'm just gonna go around. We're gonna do this super rapid fire. I'm gonna start with, just because it's order my screen, I'm gonna go Reece, I'm gonna go Jenny, and I'm gonna go Mark, Dave, Gaff, Sarah, Ryan. All right. And you just, you know, in a 1 minute window, say, what are you comfortable sharing so that you can make sure that your team is ready if you can't show up that day because you're not feeling well, right? What's a good best practice? Go ahead, Reece.
Everything. I mean, it's like you said, it's Absolutely. The team. It's the team. All of my paperwork, it's all like the entire department's paperwork pretty much is on Dropbox. I can go in, I can find, I mean, there's a mixed script, there's backstage tracks, there's, you know, databases and spreadsheets with the whole system flow. It's all got to be there, because we're all working together. We're all in the service of the designer, the show, the rest of the company. I don't think there's not really any room for like you know, my information. It's
Right.
it's the show's info, and it's all got to happen.
Yeah. Jenny?
Yeah, the same. Everything's there. It's all labeled. Don't hide things, you know, because, you know, the pens are always here. The tape is always there. You just have to have the things where they need to be. Yeah, it's all in the books, and then you have to know where.
Book, exactly. It's in the book. There you go. And I want that ISBN number as soon as you get it, because it'll be a top seller. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you know, you just have to have everything well documented, all the T's crossed, all the I's crossed. I would also say that everybody on your team, on your crew, needs to be able to do the other person's job at the drop of a hat. So if the A1 goes down, one of the A2s can step in and pick up the show, and the next A2 can take that A2's job, and you can go get a replacement for the open spot for somebody without a skill set that's, you know, might not be. What I'm trying to say is everybody needs to be able to move up the ladder. Next man available, to use an NFL term. You just need to have the skill set in place to do it. So I prefer working on crews like that. I know it doesn't always happen, but it's good to have redundancy in a team.
Yeah, good point. So Dave, thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Agreeing with everyone. Obvious, clear labeling, not just something that only works for the person doing it. I've seen some stuff where it's, oh, that's number one. Okay, where's number one go? Make it something clear. It is great when you're working on a project that has enough of a staff that you don't have to pull in an outside person and educate them, where there's, okay, I can cover half of that person's role, I can cover half of that person's role, and then that person can go take over for the A1.
Right. Gaff?
Yeah, and I agree too with everybody there. And the paperwork has to be detailed like you do. I like to do source and destination and what line it runs down. That way you know where this stuff's going, so anybody can pick it up. And you know, the more the line I like to use, the more you know, the more you can charge. So it's good to know, to be widely spread and coming from, like Mark knows, from truck world. You know, I know video. I used to align tube cameras. You know, it's good to know, you know, broaden your horizons. But we're all in this to do a show. And if one of us can't be there, the show's not stopping.
That's true. Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's detail and share everything. I'm not one of those people who thinks that, you know, my information, you know, I'm the only one who does it that you know, the best way. This business is about collaboration. It really is. And on the best days, my best days at work are the days where I feel like a huge part of a team and where there's a trust between everyone that you walk in the door with. And you know, I'm here because I've acquired years of knowledge and all of those things, but I still have lots to learn. And I want there to be an open dialogue with everybody that I work with, because it's only going to make us all better. And it's, you know, there's no reason to not share any of that information. I think everybody needs to be detailed and ready to take everybody else's position, you know, keep the show going.
Good point. Ryan?
Yeah, organization, paperwork, those things are super important for someone who might come in after you, and having things laid out in an organized, logical way is pretty important. I'm not doing anything that's, you know, my intellectual property. I'm just doing things that I've brought from different people that I've worked with over the years, put them into a format that I like, but, you know, it's very logical and anyone could follow it.
By the way, if anybody gets called in to cover for me, the name of the book is Wireless Secrets.
Just make sure you take the padlock key with you. Pete, why don't you have the final word on this one? Because, you know, you are the king of open source. You are the king of keeping all info. And I think that's what we all appreciate about you, and you have a passion.
I don't often work with a script doing RF coordination and intercom. I mean, I sometimes have it, but I can't think of the last time I ever opened it. So recently I was on, the last job I was on, doing a Dell show in Las Vegas. Matt Kerr was mixing in another room, and Henry Cohen was coordinating 600 wireless microphones. And on the third day of rehearsal, I had to leave the show because I got sick. And I told Kelly, here's the password to my computer. Everything's in there. That's all I had to pass on, because basically it was all programmed up there. He knew the equipment, and the other people that assisted him to make it work were the people that put out all the bell packs, that put out all the wireless mics, put out all the antennas. So they knew where they were and where they plugged in. So it really is a team effort. It's not just, it's rare that even an intercom person or an A2 person works alone. It's always a bunch of people, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah,
there you go.
Because we do have a good time. You know, we get to laugh and goof a lot.
Good time? I don't know.
Well, not with you, Pete, but with everybody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. Thanks for sharing your insights. You know, this is a topic that literally we could go hours on. And Mac, welcome back. You know, it's too bad that your face mask does such bad things to your goatee, but that's okay. We know you're safe, and that's good. And thanks again for being a part of this. Did you have a little closing statement you wanted to make from your undisclosed location?
Only that the information from everybody was just fantastic. It was really covered pretty much everything I could think of, and it was great. I will just say to Pete that that stage manager in Saudi was either Bob Homer or Richard Herr. It was one of those two.
Bob Homer, I
think.
And it was very
told you no names, no names.
You old guys got some great memories.
I mean, how many shows do you have the phone number of a phone backstage? Now we have cell phones.
Right.
I don't know why I had it, but I had it, and it was weird, totally weird.
Still waiting for the rest of that story.
You know what? It's just Pete, and we're going to end on that because everything with Pete is a weird good. So again, everybody, please stay safe out there. I look forward to running into as many of you as possible when we get back in the field. and having a good time and enjoying what it is that is our business. So
Everybody be
have a
safe.
great day.
Absolutely.
All right.
Safe,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Stay
Yeah.
safe.
See you guys.
And now go out and try to give somebody a big hug.
My wife.